Hey everyone, welcome to this week's Weekly Crop, but this time on location here in the beautiful Toronto Islands, which is a nice little nature sanctuary just outside of downtown Toronto. And you know, it seems like we wait 11 months a year for summer to come around. It's mostly winter around here, so when you get an opportunity to shoot outside near Toronto, you take it. And Sony has given us a great reason to do that. They've released two brand new long lenses, and we're here to kind of just try to find some wildlife and shoot some wildlife. So the first one up is a zoom lens. It's a 200 to 600 5.6 263, and it's a parsimonious $25.99 Canadian. Pretty good price for something that's this kind of lens, and it's quite light as well. So it gives you a lot of versatility for not a lot of cash. Really great from Sony. Now, if you're thinking, you know, 5.6, 6.3, it's a little too slow for me. I still need that length, but I want like pristine optical quality, and I want something a bit faster. So f4 maybe is your steam. Well, have I got a treat for you? Sony just launched this guy at the same time. It's a lot lighter than it looks, but it is a 600mm f4 lens for a mere $16,899. So, how good is a $17,000 Canadian lens versus a $2,600 Canadian lens that's a zoom? We're gonna find out. We're gonna go and get a wildlife workout, courtesy of Sony. Let's do this. Ah! Okay, so I've decided to start shooting first with the 600 f4 because why not shoot with a $16,000, $17,000 lens? To find out sort of like why, you know, you want to pay this kind of money. Now, this is just my prediction here, but you know, the Olympics are coming up. And if you've watched any sporting event, you're pretty used to seeing a swath of Canon lenses, and Sony doesn't really have anything in that realm before to compete. And so they're thinking that now's the time to get this type of lens in the hand of pros shooting those types of sporting events, but also, of course, like we are doing, wildlife. Now, what makes this lens particularly impressive is, I mean, first off, just look at the lens element. It is horkin' massive, so the amount of light that this lets in, and presumably the optical quality that goes along with it, is going to be incredibly impressive. And I'm seeing that just through the viewfinder right now. I mean, I haven't obviously checked on my computer yet, but it's going to be a very impressive image, no doubt. But what makes this a workable lens in that long focal length is two drive motors. So not just one, but two separate drive motors for focus, and a special computerized algorithm within the lens itself that helps drive focus. So whether you're using an A9 that's very powerful like I'm using here, or you're using something with maybe a little less power like a A7 III, for example, you're going to get a really, really strong autofocus performance from this because it sort of takes the camera a little bit out of the equation. And it's pretty stable handheld. Like it's a light lens for the body size that it is, and so, you know, it doesn't take a lot of effort when shooting photography for me to, I'm just gonna take this out, for me just to hold this like this. Now, of course, I'm bouncing around a lot, and that is going to affect an image, especially if you're shooting video. Obviously, if you're shooting video with this, you're gonna wanna just have it locked on a very heavy tripod, so there's no shake whatsoever. But for taking photos, if you're shooting at a pretty decently high shutter speed, like 2 to 300, I'm finding I'm getting pretty good, consistent, sharp images just holding it like this. And it's not too fatiguing, which is great. So while we're on the subject of stability, this lens has 3 stability modes on it, along with a lot of other little switches and buttons that kind of come along with long pro lenses like this. So a lot of options for the shooter. But the 3 modes here, we've sort of got, number 1 is sort of your standard mode. When we swap over to number 2, it's really meant for panning. And then 3 is when it's sort of unpredictable movement, which is kind of really good for this situation where, you know, birds are kind of diving and going up and flying in every sort of direction. I'm as well just trying to constantly correct for that. That was erratic, all right. So I've done a bunch of shots in number 1 mode, and I'm just going over to number 3 now, just to see if it makes really any difference in terms of my stability when trying to get these very unpredictable creatures to do what I want them to do. Well, look at that thing. Jesus. So this is a situation where I'd rather have had the 200 to 600 on here, because the 600 is just so crazy long that I can get the bow of the ship in, and that's about it. I can't get the whole ship, and it'd be nice to be able to get the whole ship in. And so this is the kind of situation where, you know, having a prime isn't particularly advantageous. You definitely would want a zoom in this particular case, but it's gonna take me too long to get the zoom out and put it on, so I'm just gonna rock with the bow of the ship. Now, when you're making a $17,000 lens, obviously you don't want to just stack a bunch of glass in it and call it a day. There's a lot that has to go into making sure that the optics are quite good. And in this particular case, you've got several, to say the least, lens elements, but each lens element actually sort of serves a very distinct purpose. You know, there's one lens element just for bokeh, and when I'm shooting this bird here, I'm noticing that the out of focus areas are super creamy. They're not, you know, overly detailed in the way that like some other bokeh can actually be. And so it's a nice just sort of creamy ramp up to the in focus area. And that's because of that one lens element. There's also the chromatic aberrations that you have to correct for. And of course all lenses sort of have their ways of dealing with chromatic aberrations, some better than others. But in this particular case, because there's so many lens elements in it, you're at risk of greater chromatic aberrations. So there's just one lens element in there that's just solely designed to counteract a lot of the chromatic aberration. So you're going to have a very nice clean image. And then there's a sort of a nano coating on top of that. I don't even know what the nano coating does. I just know that that's what it's called. Presumably it deals with flares and all that type of things that typically coatings will deal with. So really accurate autofocus, but really creamy image. Top notch. Okay, I've had enough of a workout with the 600, so I'm going to switch over to the 200 to 600 now and give myself a little bit of a break and open up my possibilities of framing. So here we go. We're going to track on these guys. Let's see how long it holds them for. And they are going at a blistering speed. It's nearly impossible to keep up. But you know, the lens is doing okay. I'm getting a little bored. The lens is holding very, very well. And I have no idea how close they actually are in real life. Oh, that's remarkable. That is so remarkable. That is so remarkable. That's remarkable. Yeah. That's impressive. All right, so while the 600 f4 is a truly impressive lens, and you should be impressed by it because it has all the bells and whistles that you'd expect from a lens that costs $17,000. But the real story here, I think, is this 2 to 600 f5.6 to 6.3. And the reason is that this has a lot of the features that the 600 has. It has 3 different stability modes, which I found super useful in both lenses. They work really, really well. You can tell a difference between each one of those stability modes. So in terms of that feature set, amazing. The optics in this one through the EVF look just about as good as the 600, to be perfectly honest. I think that like when it gets down to looking at the files on a big screen, you know, and some pixel peeping, you're going to be able to see the difference in the optics. But for your money, what you get here for a fraction of the cost of the 600 is remarkable, and you get that, you know, very fluid focal range 2 to 600. The other thing that's really great about this lens in particular that makes this lens so strong is the autofocus, to me, seemed to work just as good as the 600. So remember, the 600 had those dual drive motors and that special algorithm. I'm not entirely certain whether that places this lens in that sort of technology gamut, but I didn't see a perceivable difference between the performance of this lens and the performance of the 600 as far as autofocus is concerned. So what I think this all means is that if you are a serious photographer, quote unquote, and that you're doing some high production value photography, whether it be wildlife or sports or something to that nature, then the 600 f4 is going to be a very important lens if you are a Sony shooter and having Sony lenses with you. So you're going to start to see likely a lot more high-end Sony lenses in those professional sports arenas, effectively. But when it comes to the 2 to 600, this is taking a lot of the technology from that 600 lens and giving it to the prosumer, or even really the consumer market. For $2,600, you just get such a powerful lens that steals so much technology from that 600, it's almost a no-brainer. I think you're going to start to see a ton of these out in the wild. But for now, that's about it. I think I've got as many bird photos. Oh, look, there's a seagull. Oh, come on. Come on. Oh, one scat. Gotcha. in their natural habitat. And that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching, guys. As always, please subscribe to our channel and thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever the spirit moves you to do, and find us as well on all the internet places. We are Vistek, and this is me saying goodbye and happy shooting.